It started on a Thursday afternoon, hot, humid, the kind of southern heat that hangs in the air like an argument left unfinished. We live in one of those cookie-cutter neighborhoods, identical mailboxes, carefully mowed lawns, and people who pretend they're friendlier than they really are. You know the type. The HOA runs things like it's their own little kingdom, and lately, they've been acting more like cops than volunteers. But even with all that, nothing prepared me for what happened to my son. He's 13. Quiet kid. Keeps to himself. That day, he was just walking home from school, earbuds and backpack slung low, minding his own business. But two grown men in matching polos with clipboards and self-importance dripping off them decided he was a threat. Said they were HOA security. Claimed he looked suspicious, like he was scoping out properties. I'm sorry, what? A 7th grader with a Buzz Lightyear keychain is suddenly a criminal now? They surrounded him near the walking path by the cul-de-sac, grilling him like he'd broken into someone's house. No badges, no real authority, just fake titles and a power trip. When I got the call from my son, voice shaking, I left work without grabbing my keys. But my dad? Oh, he got there first. And what happened next? Well, let's just say those two men won't be forgetting it anytime soon. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from, and if your neighborhood's ever dealt with one of these kinds of HOA heroes. By the time I got there, my dad was already standing between my son and the two self-declared security officers, like a wall made of concrete and 50 years of no-nonsense parenting. My son was off to the side, clutching his backpack like a shield, eyes red and chest heaving. I could tell he'd tried not to cry, but the fear, the humiliation, it was written all over his face. And my dad? His arms were crossed tight, jaw locked, the way it gets right before he does something no one forgets. The two men didn't even look nervous. They had the smug, rehearsed attitude. One of them even chuckled when my dad asked who they were. We're part of the HOA safety patrol, sir, the taller one said, flashing some plastic card like it meant anything. Your son was acting suspicious near the fence line. We have a duty to investigate. Investigate? My dad leaned forward, voice flat. He lives here, and you're not police. The guy actually had the nerve to scoff and say, well, that's your opinion. I could see it happen. The exact second something in my dad snapped. His posture didn't change, but his eyes did. And then, without another word, he stepped in and slammed the clipboard guy straight to the pavement. No warning. Just one clean, calculated move. The other man lunged in, shouting, tried to grab my dad's arm, and ended up face down in the grass with my dad's knee pressed firmly against his shoulder blade. My son backed up fast, shocked. So was I. But what shook me most was how calm my dad was. Like this wasn't new for him. Like he'd been waiting for a moment just like this to remind the world not to mess with his family. The neighbors started coming out almost immediately. Doors creaking open, blinds twitching, phones held up like it was a backyard episode of Cops. Nobody stepped in. Nobody said a word. Just stood there watching, murmuring to each other like this was a spectacle they'd paid to see. My dad didn't flinch. He stayed locked in place, kneeling on one guy while the other wheezed on the pavement, trying to sit up but failing. You touch a child again, and I'll pin you to the asphalt until the real police show up, my dad said, his voice low, deadly calm. It wasn't long before the HOA president, Karen something, came storming down the street in her usual power walk, face already twisted like she'd tasted something bitter. What's going on here? She screeched, trying to assert authority like it was currency. My dad didn't even look at her. He just said, call the sheriff. That rattled her. You don't understand, she said, her voice dropping into that fake reasonable tone people use when they're trying to keep control. They're with us. They're trained. Trained? Trained for what? Harassing kids with plastic badges and printed vests? By then, I'd wrapped my arms around my son. He was still trembling, trying not to let it show, but I felt it. Felt how badly he needed someone to tell him he wasn't crazy, that what just happened was not okay. Karen kept insisting they had authorization, but couldn't produce a single document to prove it. And when the cops did finally show up, let's just say things got real quiet real fast. especially when one of the officers recognized my dad from his former job with the county. "You again?" the officer said, half grinning. What did they do this time? The moment that officer recognized my dad, everything shifted. The fake authority melted off those two guys like sweat on asphalt. They stopped trying to talk tough, stopped trying to explain, just laid there, staring at the sky like maybe if they stayed still enough, this would all go away. The taller one, the clipboard king, finally spoke up. We were just following protocol. There'd been break-ins lately and we thought, but the officer cut him off. And you thought a kid in a middle school hoodie was casing the place? That's when it all came spilling out. The HOA had apparently voted in secret to create a community safety initiative. No real votes, no homeowner input, just a couple of board members giving their buddies little laminated badges and permission to patrol the area. No training, no oversight, just unchecked authority and too much time on their hands. Karen tried to save face. Of course. Said my son matched the description. Said they were just trying to be proactive, but the sheriff's deputy didn't buy it. He asked my son a few gentle questions, got the full story, and then turned to Karen with this look like he was already tired of her mouth. "You know impersonating law enforcement carries legal consequences, right?" he said. Her face went pale. "They weren't impersonating anyone," she stammered. "They're neighborhood volunteers." "Volunteers," he repeated, deadpan, "who detained a minor and claimed investigatory authority. That's not volunteering. That's unlawful restraint." And just like that, the HOA fantasy crumbled. My dad finally stood up and walked over to me and my son, his voice still quiet but heavy. "You okay?" he asked. My son nodded, but didn't speak. He just looked up at my dad like he was seeing him in a whole new light, like the old man who never said much had just become a superhero. I expected the HOA to back off after that. You'd think 2 of their security patrol ending up in the back of a sheriff's cruiser would be enough of a wake-up call. But no, these people weren't just arrogant, they were committed. Karen showed up at our door the next morning, smiles stretched tight like cellophane over a rotting fruit tray. "I just wanted to clear the air," she said. "There's been a lot of misunderstanding." My dad didn't even let her get past the porch. "You want to apologize?" he asked. She blinked, taken off guard. "Well, yes, of course," she said, though her tone said anything but. My dad waited. Silence. "Well," he said, "apologize." But instead of owning up, she doubled down. "Your son was on common ground. We have every right to ensure the safety of the neighborhood." My blood boiled. "He was walking home from school, Karen, with earbuds in. That's the threat your guys tackled?" She had the nerve to shrug. "The officers didn't tackle him," she said. "They engaged. It's all in the report." That's when it clicked. These people had actually written a report. Not for the police, not for any real authority, but for their little HOA records, like this was a legitimate operation. She handed us a paper copy. My dad didn't even look at it. He folded it in half and tossed it back. "Tell your patrol to stay away from my grandson. Next time they lay a hand on him, I won't be so polite." Karen flinched just slightly and left without another word. I thought that would be the end of it, but I underestimated just how far these people would go to protect their own egos. Because that afternoon I got an email from the HOA. They weren't backing down, they were doubling down. The email was as ridiculous as it was infuriating. Dressed up in formal language, it accused us, yes us, of creating an unsafe environment by interfering with HOA's safety procedures. They claimed my dad's actions were excessive and threatening, and that they would be reviewing our compliance with community expectations. I read the message out loud, hand shaking. My son sat on the couch silently, head down. "Are we in trouble?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. "No," my dad said, standing by the window with his arms crossed. "They are." He meant it. That night, he stayed up late on the phone, calling people I hadn't heard from in years. Old contacts from his days in the sheriff's department, retired deputies, a county attorney, even someone who worked part-time for the local paper. It turns out, this wasn't the first time an HOA had stepped out of line in our area. but it might be the first time they did it to the wrong kid. The next morning, a letter was delivered to every mailbox in the subdivision. Not from the HOA, but from my dad. Plain white paper. Black ink. A full-page summary of what had happened. Names, times, actions, and consequences. He listed the statutes the security team violated. Quoted the sheriff's report. Even included a contact number for the county office, in case neighbors wanted to confirm it wasn't just some family drama. It was surgical, calm, devastating. By lunchtime, I saw neighbors standing in driveways with the letter in hand, shaking their heads. Some were mad. Some were embarrassed. A few knocked on our door to say they were sorry for not stepping in, for believing the HOA story. And Karen? She sent another email. This time, calling the letter inflammatory and deeply misleading. She had no idea this was just getting started. That weekend, my dad called a family meeting in the living room, something he hadn't done since I was a teenager sneaking out past curfew. He stood in front of us with a folder in his hand, and that same quiet intensity he carried when things got real. This isn't just about what they did to him, he said, nodding toward my son. It's about making sure they can't do it to anyone else. He opened the folder and pulled out a stack of paperwork. It was a draft petition to dissolve the HOA board, not just reprimand them, not file a complaint, take the whole operation apart from the inside. We only need 30 signatures to force a vote, he said, and I plan to get 50. I blinked. You sure about this? He gave a rare smile. Never been more sure. So we made a plan. My dad would handle the petition. I gathered testimonials from neighbors who'd been harassed by the HOA in the past, because once we started talking, the stories came out. People fined for wind chimes, threatened over fence colors, harassed for letting their kids chalk on the sidewalk. This wasn't new. It was just the first time someone pushed back hard enough. Even my son got involved. Quietly, carefully, he made a short video explaining what happened. No dramatics. No anger, just a 13-year-old kid describing how two grown men cornered him, accused him of things he didn't understand, and made him feel like a criminal for walking home. He didn't name names. Didn't need to. The truth was enough. We posted the video online, sent it to a few local parents' groups. Within 24 hours, it had over 1,000 views, and the comments poured in. People were outraged. People were ready. We weren't just fighting back anymore. We were starting something bigger. It all came to a head at the next HOA meeting. Normally, those things are sleepy affairs. 6 people in folding chairs and someone arguing about shrub height. Not this time. That night, the rec center was packed, wall to wall with neighbors' parents, even a few reporters with notepads and side eyes. Karen sat at the front table like she was still queen of the castle, flanked by her board members in matching polos and matching frowns. But when my dad stepped up to the mic, the room changed. The chatter died down. Phones went up, and for a full 30 minutes, he laid it all out. What happened to my son? How the board created an unlicensed patrol without consent or oversight. The legal violations, the harassment, the lies. Then he held up a manila folder, our petition. 56 signatures, he said. Every single one from a homeowner who's tired of being bullied. Karen tried to speak, but the crowd wasn't having it. Someone shouted, "We want to vote." Someone else added, "You had no right." The board tried to restore order, but it was too late. The momentum had shifted. My dad handed the petition to the HOA secretary and calmly stepped down. And then, from the back of the room, my son stood up. Everyone turned. He didn't say much. Just repeated the same sentence from his video. I didn't feel safe in my own neighborhood. That hit harder than any speech. The vote wasn't immediate. They had to review the petition, but the damage was done. By the time the meeting ended, Karen couldn't even make eye contact with anyone. Her board members looked like they were ready to jump ship. Neighbors who'd stayed silent for years were suddenly emboldened. This wasn't just a call-out. It was a reckoning. Over the next few days, it felt like the whole neighborhood was holding its breath. The HOA board tried to do damage control, sent out a long-winded email full of buzzwords and weak denials. claimed everything was taken out of context and that their safety initiative had been misinterpreted. But it didn't matter anymore. People had seen the truth. They saw it in my dad's calm fury, in my son's quiet fear, in the paper trail that exposed just how far the board had overstepped. Then the consequences started rolling in. First, the sheriff's department opened an investigation into the two men who harassed my son. Turns out one of them had a prior incident from another community. Same fake badge, same power trip. Charges were filed for impersonating an officer and unlawful detainment. The other guy lawyered up fast and disappeared from the neighborhood practically overnight. Then came the press. A local news station picked up the story, titled it something dramatic. HOA harassment or neighborhood watch gone wrong? We didn't even have to say much. The footage spoke for itself. My son's video, the petition, the crowd at the meeting, it all painted a picture the board couldn't erase. And Karen? Oh, she finally cracked. A week after the meeting, she resigned. No statement, no apology, just a notice on the HOA's website and a new acting president who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. The board was suddenly begging for community input. Meetings opened up. Rules were reviewed. That tight grip they'd had on the neighborhood, it loosened fast. As for my dad, he didn't gloat. He didn't strut. He just mowed his lawn like he always did, nodded at neighbors when they waved, and kept showing up solid, steady, and unshakable. The message had been sent, loud and clear. We never planned to become the family that changed everything. But sometimes life doesn't give you a choice. It gives you a moment. And that moment, when two fake security officers thought they could intimidate a kid and get away with it, that was ours. Things feel different now. Not just quieter, better. My son walks home with his head up. Neighbors who once barely nodded now stop to chat, ask how we're doing. And the new HOA board? Well, they're still figuring things out, but now they know better than to pretend a clipboard gives them power. I think what sticks with me most is what happened a few weeks later. My dad, who is exactly the emotional type, sat with my son on the porch swing one evening. Just the two of them. I watched through the window, sipping tea, pretending not to listen. My son asked him why he stepped in so fast, why he got so angry. My dad didn't say much, just looked out the street and said, "Because I remember what it feels like to be powerless, and I won't let that happen to you." There was this long silence after that, the kind that's heavy but healing. And I realized this wasn't just about justice. It was about legacy, about the kind of men we raise, and the kind of men who raise us. Our neighborhood might look the same on the surface, same lawns, same mailboxes, but something changed. People started looking out for each other again, started asking questions, holding folks accountable. And maybe that's the real win here. Not the headlines, not the resignation, but the way we reminded people that strength doesn't always wear a badge, and family doesn't back down. We kept that crumpled HOA violation letter tucked in the drawer next to the petition papers. A reminder of where we've been and how far we'll go for the ones we love.